And okay, great. This is a perfect segue question. Thank you so much, Nicholas Sawzerac. He says, while I enjoyed Mythbusters, I appreciate the work you are doing now to inspire creators even more. Thank you. I am also finding it even more creatively and personally satisfying. Did you ever feel that once Mythbusters wrapped that you had peaked? No, definitely not. I was curious about what was next, but again, and I've said this before, but Jamie and I, and actually also Carrie, Tori, and Grant, we are all freelancers. And as such, you never ever stop thinking about what's the next gig. You never stop planning for, laying groundwork for, making connections for the next gig. And you know, as I was wrapping up Mythbusters, I was very clear, even years before the show wrapped in early like 2010, 2011, I was starting to make my own plans about how I wanted to exit the show. And the main thing I wanted was to not end up being that guy from that show. I wanted my name to be something you'd remember. It's one of the reasons we started Test It. And it's one of the reasons for a lot of the other decisions. But regarding the wrapping up of Mythbusters, I have a wonderful question here from True Dad of, who says, whose idea was it to replicate the shawarma scene from Avengers post-credits at the end of the Mythbusters run? Just for reference, this is how we wrapped Mythbusters. We all sat in our local deli on Mythbusters, and here you can see the shot. That's the camera shot, and we sat there and sort of replicated the end of the Avengers. I honestly cannot remember whose idea it was. It was a brilliant idea, and it was really fun to shoot. We shot that on the 29th. This was on October 29th, 2015. So it's just a few days before we finished production. For reference, I drove through the mile of Mythbuster props for the last episode. I did that on the 22nd. So this is a week later. And then we went back to the shop and we took a picture with the entire Mythbusters production team as it stood when we wrapped. Then we took a picture of, that was Huxley. Sorry. That is the OG Mythbusters crew, the longest serving. That's our crew as it stood when we wrapped. That's my dog Huxley in the cave. And this was the last shoot. We went to the Friends of Amateur Rocketry in Mojave on the 3rd of November, 2015, and did the very last shoot. I know that, and I'm very nostalgic about that day because we finished filming with FAR, F-A-R, Friends of Amateur Rocketry. This is the rocketry club from which Elon plucked much of the brain trust for SpaceX, is the story I was told. But we wrapped shooting in Mojave at around 2:30 in the afternoon, and I had my Land Cruiser, my 1982 Toyota Land Cruiser, and I drove, instead of going south to Bakersfield, back up 5 like everyone does to get home, I went due west, straight over the Sierras. It took me 5 hours. I had no idea how wide the Central Valley actually is. Now I have some idea. It feels like some Mythbusters-centric discussion here. So Vicky Bly has a Lawnchair question. She says, the Lawnchair weather balloon episode of Mythbusters, were you frightened while up in the air? I would have been terrified of falling. I, too, am terrified of falling. It is no fun to be at heights, and I consider having a reasonable fear of heights to be genuinely good form. So the Lawnchair Larry is the name of that myth because of the name of the man that rode his lawn chair to fame. He was hoping just to hover above his backyard in a lawn chair with a bunch of weather balloons on it, which he bought at Surplus, probably from American Science and Surplus, which is where I bought my first weather balloons. American Science and Surplus, an absolutely important makerspace mothership of incredible materials out of Chicago. The very first time I went to Chicago, I visited them. They know how much I love them. So Lawnchair Larry was the first story that Jamie and I were told might get tested on a show potentially to be called Mythbusters. So when we shot our demo reel, Lawnchair Larry was the story we discussed. And it was very interesting because at the beginning of that story, I was like, okay, we're doing Lawnchair Larry. I'm kind of nervous about tying weather balloons to a lawn chair and flying. So how do we do it safely? And, I used to be a stage rigger. So I just started diagramming out what we're going to do, what we're going to need, what the weights are. And then I realized, actually, this is not a very dangerous system because looks like I can do this with about 20 weather balloons. And that means I have a distributed set of failure points. I don't have a singular failure point. I'm not trying to fly on one balloon, which is much scarier from a rigging redundancy standpoint. And so immediately the rigger in me was like, this is great. I can bundle these, but I can keep them separate. So not bundle these, but like I can tie this so that basically I have multiple points of failure and there is no single place this thing could go cattywampus. That is always the main thing we were considering about doing. Sorry. Yeah, when you're talking safety, if you have to endure a single point of failure, you're going to want to do it's almost like, I know I'm bouncing all over the place here, but Penn and Teller, magicians, Vegas, magicians with a residency in Vegas for decades, and good friends of mine. They have done a lot of stunts which are famously dangerous, like the bullet catch, in which a magician shoots another magician, or some rando shoots a magician on stage, and the bullet ends up in his mouth. This is a trick that has killed more magicians than any other trick. And Penn and Teller didn't do it for years until they could build in the level of redundancy of safety that they absolutely require. It's a great object lesson in how to do something safely. So no, Vicki, once we were set up and I realized that we could distribute my load across these 17 or 20 balloons, I felt pretty reasonable about going up with a harness that was also tethered to the balloons. I will tell you that one of the things Lawnchair Larry did is he brought a BB gun because he thought he could shoot balloons out to adjust his level of buoyancy. The problem is that buoyancy, in cartoons, buoyancy is this adjustable thing. In reality, buoyancy is binary. And by that I mean, if you have something heavy and you tie a bunch of balloons to it, when it becomes buoyant, it just takes off. And it takes off until the sky gets in the way, i.e. the air gets too thin for the balloons to hold the helium that they're in. But that's what happened to Lawnchair Larry. He tied the balloons to his chair and just immediately rose way farther than he wanted to start to adjust. And so the moment he was up above the ground, he was like, I didn't feel like using the BB gun. I will admit, I also did not want to use my BB gun once I was up there. All right, let's see here. Thank you for watching. I wanted to talk to you about Tested membership. The Tested members are a key community that we find really, really remarkable. That's very separate from Tested and from YouTube. The Tested members, they buy each other memberships during our live streams. So if you're wondering whether to become a member, watch one of our live streams and someone may just give you one. It is hard to overestimate how much the Tested members actually make possible on this channel. They give us a lot of wiggle room. They give us a huge amount of feedback.
That's a member right now.
Thank you so much for enjoying your membership. Description for everything you need to know. And for all the members out there, thank you, thank you, thank you.